There are now 1.41 billion people in India. It's overtaking China to become the most populated nation on Earth. This global shift is creating massive consequences for India's people, its economy, and the rest of the world.
India has no choice but to invest in its people.
The chances of India becoming successful are much higher than not.
China managed to leverage its huge population surge in the 70s to become an economic powerhouse. But that financial power is being put to the test as its population ages and shrinks because of the one-child policy it introduced in the 80s. India is now at a crossroads. It has this once-in-a-generation opportunity to get into the world's top 3 economies. But half of this country's population is under 30 and they're already in fierce competition for jobs. So can the Indian government create enough work for the young population?
Zindabad! Inqilab! Zindabad!
Like it's difficult for Indian youth to get a jobs.
How do you put these people into meaningfully working to raise their living standards as well as the standards of the country?
Some politicians say they need to deal with this population growth so there are enough resources for everyone. So the Indian government is offering incentives for people to get surgery that'll stop reproduction. Supporters say it'll deal with this boom. Critics say it's targeting minorities.
Nowhere in the world do you have such high sterilization rates.
So how India invests in its women and girls is going to be the key driver of where India is going for the world.
So can India make the most of its new title as the world's most populous country, or will this crown be a heavy burden? So to understand what this all means for India, it's worth having a look at what the population boom did for China. After World War II, people in China were having a lot of kids. The population went from 540 million people in 1949 to close to 1 billion in 1980. The government was worried this growth was unsustainable, so it introduced the controversial one-child policy in 1979. In the short term, that was rocket fuel for its economy. There were huge numbers of working adults raising fewer children, so China quickly became the world's second largest economy as it opened up to the world. This is known as the demographic dividend.
So if you have more young people, then they work more because they are always working compared to, say, seniors or children. As a result, the GDP of the country grows. And along with that come various other advantages because these working population, they consume less compared to what they produce.
While having more parents than children is great when everyone's young, it becomes a disadvantage as those parents get older. China's population shrunk for the first time in 60 years in 2022.
Newly released government data shows the birth rate at a record low, with the fewest babies born last year since the founding of Communist China in 1949.
The number of Chinese people fell to around 1.4 billion, and even though the one-child policy was scrapped in 2016, experts say that drop will continue. So, like China, India has also tried a variety of different ways to try and reduce its population. And it started in 1975. India was actually the first country in the world to introduce a national family planning scheme. But this was a particularly dark part in India's history. Millions of men were forcibly given vasectomies, pretty much dragged off the street and taken to hospitals and health centres to be given surgical sterilisation. Now, a lot of people call this policy gruesome, abhorrent. There's a lot of criticism of the Indian government at the time. And now we're going to meet a man who actually was one of those who was given a vasectomy. And he says only poor men were targeted in this. And now a lot of these people are calling for compensation.
और मेरे को यहाँ से ज़बरदस्ती पकड़ के और मेरी दुकान पे बहुत कारीगर था। किसी टाइम में सन 72-73 में मेरे पास कारीगर कोई 40-45 कारीगर था, बहुत था। कुछ कारीगरों को यहाँ से पकड़ के घसीट के उनकी भी नसबंदी ज़बरदस्ती करी। मैंने फिर डॉक्टर को कहा, डॉक्टर को मैंने कहा डॉक्टर जिंदल था यहाँ। मैंने कहा आपको भी पता है कि मेरी घरवाली की नसबंदी हो रही है और मेरी क्यों कर रहे हो? वो कहने लगे जी हमें तो ऑर्डर आया है, ये आए हुए हैं।
These attempts to control the population here in India, it's not something that's just been left in the past. It's happening in the present day. I'm following these health workers in this village in the state of Haryana. It's north of New Delhi, and they're going door to door, speaking to every person they come across about family planning, how many children they're having, contraception, and most importantly, surgical sterilisation. So they'll permanently stop having children. And this is a big part of India's attempts to control the ballooning population.
ऐसा जी, हम उनके घर पे जाते हैं और उनके परिवार से भी मिलते हैं, उनके पति से भी मिलते हैं, और जो जैसे कि हमारी जिनके पास हम गए उनके ऑपरेशन के लिए हमने मोटिवेट किया, उनसे बताया कि भाई इतना महंगवाड़ा हो रहा है, इतने महंगवाड़े में इतने 4-4 बच्चे तो बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाते हैं, तो इसलिए कि
Vasectomies are safer and easier for men, but women are still copping the brunt of this reproductive surgery.
नहीं, आदमी ने तो अब तक एक ने ही करवाया है, फीमेल से ही ज़्यादा करवाए हैं ऑपरेशन।
जी हस्बैंड अंजुर मुझे बहुत दुबले पतले, इतना है ऑपरेशन कराने के लिए।
Asha has 4 kids. She's planning on getting the surgery. The state government will pay her the equivalent of 24 Australian dollars for getting the operation, and the health worker who convinced her to do it will get $18.
जब ऑपरेशन हो जाए कुछ बच्चों की वो भविष्य के लिए महंगाई।
Komal is a mother of 2 children. She lives with them and her husband, and I met her 5 days after she got the sterilisation surgery.
जी बस मैंने बच्चे नहीं चाहिए थे, 2 बच्चे हैं, ये ठीक है, परिवार पूरा हो गया। तो यही कहती हूँ भाई देखो जितना अपना वो हो इतना ही बच्चे पैदा करने चाहिए कि
Giving people money to get reproductive surgery is divisive. Some researchers say it's coercing women to get an invasive procedure.
There is a push by the providers always for sterilisation, and they do not invest counselling or motivating or sharing more information on the benefits women could experience from temporary methods, especially now when the world has so many long-lasting contraceptive methods.
Investments in women, in their agency, in their education, has got far more impact than policies which are coercive.
India's population has been growing since independence in 1947, going from 350 million then to just over 1.4 billion people in 2023. By the start of the next decade, more than 1/3 of humanity will live in India or China. 1 in 5 people under 25 globally now calls India home.
If we don't invest very quickly and substantially in young people, this window of opportunity will close. China has an aging population and decreasing young population. India will reach the same stage if we don't invest in our young people.
One of the key challenges facing India is employment. Every year, an estimated 8 million young people come onto the job market. That could give India a workforce of 1 billion people by the end of the decade. But the competition for work is so fierce, applicants have become violent. Last year, more than 10 million people applied for 35,000 jobs with the railways, one of the country's largest employers. In one region, 11,000 people applied for 15 government jobs as labourers, drivers and watchmen. India is the world's youngest country and it has major goals to become the next economic superpower. But only 40% of people of working age in this country actually have employment. So in order to reach these goals, India needs to provide enough jobs and skill up young people as they're finishing school. We're about to meet some young people who are actually protesting here in New Delhi. They're calling for more job opportunities, especially in the public sector.
हम हमारा अधिकार मांगते नहीं किसी से भीख मांगते अरे हम हमारा अधिकार मांगते
Sohan, do you think there are enough jobs for young people as the population expands?
Not really. In fact, in India, people are I would say, job creation is very less. We have seen in last decades, the India is facing a problem of unemployment.
It is becoming day by day harder. If one vacancy came out of the gate, then there are thousands of application forms for the same.
It's obvious that a lot of people really want a job here, and the benefit of having so many young people in this country is they can adapt.
But having a young population means that you would be able to quickly retrain them, or at least they'll have an opportunity and desire and hunger to learn new skills and be able to capitalize on these new types of jobs.
Another challenge facing the country is the fact that up to 90% of India's workforce is in unstable work, without regular pay, stable hours, or benefits. One way China became rich was through manufacturing. But now, with COVID interrupting the supply chain in China, countries have been looking to find a new manufacturing hub. This could be a huge opportunity for India.
Apple is reportedly planning to start making its new iPhone 14 in India about 2 months after its release out of China.
There's a supply chain realignment that's happening in the globe. India is likely to benefit from that quite a lot. But it's not that easy, China built these things over decades, and when you do some sort of manufacturing in a final stage, there's a whole ecosystem of suppliers, tier 1, tier 2s and beyond that exist to make this work. India doesn't have that.
China's political system was another reason its economy did so well. As a communist country, it could introduce major policies with not a lot of public resistance. India is the world's largest democracy, so that means technically a government can get voted out if a policy is really unpopular.
I believe, in spite of being a democratic, following the democratic processes, the process for India will be much faster. Because of the simple fact that people here are much more open. It's an open society. While authoritarian regimes follow a force and a sort of coercive approach, here more of an educative approach works fairly well.
A major untapped resource to get India on its way to becoming the next economic power is its women. Only a quarter of them are working. Compare this to China, where women make up about 45% of the workforce.
The biggest impediment to women being in the workplace is their caregiving role. We need schools, we need daycares, and I think that patriarchal mindset has to change.
While India takes the prize of the most populous nation, it's not evenly spread across the country. 2 states in the north are having the most babies, while in the richer south, birth rates are falling. This brings up a unique problem where India has to deal with both an ageing population and a baby boom all in the one country.
Due to investments in health and education and development, India is already at a stage where one sort of stage has been crossed. India's population is now going to decline.
The next few decades will be critical for India with this new title as the most populous nation on the planet. The government needs to employ and educate its young people while balancing sustainable population growth and the rights of minorities and women. But experts watching this space say India can overcome these problems and there's a great future ahead.
We think India is at a great juncture. The direction is absolutely right. India's positives are far outweigh the constraints. India's, what we define, is undergoing a rapid and generational demographic transition. It's in a once in a lifetime opportunity for India.